It's Thursday, May 23rd, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. The Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix, presented by Lear, marks its 30th anniversary and kicks off 3 days of racing starting May 31st. The event attracts nearly 100,000 visitors to Belle Isle, is televised nationwide, and helps raise millions of dollars to fix up Detroit's signature island park. But despite a new 3-year deal to keep the race there, a group called Belle Isle Concern claims it isn't worth it. They say the race violates the park's mission and causes more money in damage than it brings in. We'll hear from 3 members of that group right after this.
Daily Detroit is brought to you in part by support from people like you. As a listener, you can help us push Detroit's conversation forward by becoming a Patreon member. For as little as $1 a month or as much as you see fit, you can help ensure these episodes keep coming. Visit dailydetroit.com/join. And thank you.
In the studio, Angela Lugo-Thomas, Michael Betzold, and Sandra Novacek. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. A good way to sort of kick this off was by sort of, let's help people understand what we're talking about here. Like, if you were to go over to Belle Isle today and visit the park, what would you see and what's it like over there right now? Because I'll be honest, it's been several months since I've been over to Belle Isle. I haven't been there recently.
I actually did that. I was just there 2 hours ago. You come off the bridge, you turn right towards Sunset Point, and you can't go any farther. It's completely blocked off to vehicles, to bicyclists, to pedestrians, and that whole end of the island all the way around to near where the conservatory and aquarium are. That road is closed off. It's, full of grandstands, concrete barriers, fences, and lots of corporate advertisement signage. Mm-hmm. So it's, to me, abominable. I ride my bike on Belle Isle every morning. I go there for rest and relaxation and therapy and refuge. And this is an incredibly invasive intrusion on what is Detroit's most precious public space.
Mm-hmm. So it's essentially like you can't use the park at all at this point, or
you can use the park, but you can't use the end of it that's most accessible to people.
Yeah,
and you have to drive through basically a tunnel of racetrack to get there.
It's a little bit over 30% of the island that is now taken over by the Grand Prix, and that actually didn't start just a few days ago. It started on Earth Day on April 22nd. So it's been going on for 30 days, just about. And the footprint has gotten larger from past years. It keeps on encroaching on more and more space. And we had a picnic last Saturday, and one of the participants at the picnic said, this looks like a war zone. Mm-hmm. Angela's been going out there almost every day.
Michael, you talked about your connection to the Island Park, and before we rolled tape here, Angela, we were talking a little bit about everybody's sort of connection to Belle Isle. So, you're a regular park user.
I am. I am a member of Girl Trek, and we are a walking group. So one of the best places to walk in our area is Belle Isle.
Sure.
So I've been going there. Even before I was a member of Girl Trek, I've been going to Belle Isle since 1979 when I moved to Detroit. And I love that place. It has so many memories for me. One of the most memorable is that my grandmother ran the Belle Isle Zoo when it was open for 12 years. So I have a lot of memories there. Some of my family's most precious memories are on Belle Isle. And when I go there now, even though the Grand Prix has been, using Belle Isle for quite a number of years, every year around this time, I get pissed off. I do.
Uh-huh. And it's worse than ever this year. And the fact that it's closed off already before Memorial Day weekend, 30% of the island, and the DNR has not said anything about it, and the Grand Prix says it's still open. On their website and on their Twitter feed. It's open to Sunset Point. Well, it's not. And I'm really tired of the lies that the people who promote the Grand Prix keep telling.
Absolutely.
And one of the biggest lies is that, it's only a weekend. And, the other lie is, this is great for Detroit. And I'd like to talk about how that is a total falsehood.
So let's get into that. They signed, as I mentioned, a new 3-year deal last fall. Stipulates about 60 days total for set up the actual race event itself and tear down. But they've talked about they've increased the amount of money that they're paying the state for use of what's now Belle Isle State Park. It's a little over $400,000 now. They have, raised money through the Grand Prixmere Gala charity event to fix up the Scott Fountain. I mean, these are good things, right?
Sure, but they don't have to have a race in order to do it. There's a lot of corporations in the city that make donations to organizations, but they don't require that a Grand Prix be run on their property.
It's a classic pay-to-play.
Yeah, it's quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really...
It definitely is.
And I said this at a meeting last year that I was like, a lot of people came out, saying how much they love Detroit, how much they love Belle Isle and all of this wonderful energy. And I said, do you only love it and support it when you get something in return?
Yeah. So,
what they're contributing to the island is a pittance compared to what they do to the island. And most of the contributions are in the form of, the fountain, which they originally destroyed some of the Pewabic tiles, and now they're repairing it. The casino, they fixed the roof because that's their media headquarters.
So they want that to be good.
A lot more concrete. A lot more pavement, which was not paid for by Roger Penske. It was paid for by the taxpayers of Michigan, $4 million of that for the taxpayers of Michigan. And like Sandy said, I would love to, I know grant writers. I'm a writer, I'm a journalist. I'm not a grant writer, but I know plenty of grant writers who would love to be employed to write grants to foundations to support Belle Isle. They would have no trouble getting the a little bit over $1 million that the Belle Isle receives from the Grand Prix as ransom for holding it hostage for 2 months of the year.
But I mean, we've, Jared and I have, talked with the Belle Isle Conservancy and stuff. I mean, these funds are not coming in. I mean, we've talked many times on the show about how small Belle Isle's budget is, its operating budget, for infrastructure and other improvements. I mean, it's a tiny fraction of what, say, Central Park in New York gets from a private foundation. They're not a city-funded park, even though they're a municipal park. The fact is that Belle Isle needs all the help it can get, right? I mean, you don't
to protect it. It does need all the help it can get to protect the natural landscape and the cultural landscape. And, the money that is given by the Grand Prix is a very small amount. It really is a very large amount. The Grand Prixmere has raised anywhere from $400,000 to $1.5 million. Okay, but is that really that much? I mean, again, there's a lot of other...
Well, it's something, though.
Well, I know, but there's other places out there that would have a mission that would match the mission of what the Belle Isle Conservancy and the DNR's mission is, and that's to protect and preserve the landscape, the wildlife, the historic structures that are there, all those things. Not to encroach on them, to restrict them, and to harm them.
And when you talk about the financial contribution, you have to also weigh in the lost revenue from the other events that cannot be held during the time of the Grand Prix. And that's a significant amount in terms of weddings and other rentals that, the DNR itself has documented that. And there's no accounting for the amount of benefits to citizens of having a park year-round.
No cost-benefit analysis has
and
ever been done.
No environmental impact study, no cost-benefit analysis.
No.
It's just, here, give us some money, we're desperate, okay, we'll take it.
Yeah.
And the Belle Isle Conservancy is headed by a woman who loves the partnership with Roger Penske, but it pays part of her salary and her budget. And why is she the one who's controlling the decisions about Belle Isle? Why is she the one that gets to say, yes, that's a good thing for the park?
Yeah,
because the users of the park disagree vehemently and overwhelmingly The regular users of the park do not want this race, and we've expressed that many times.
I'm gonna be a little. I'm always nervous when people say all of anything, right? So all of the users, all of whatever. I get a
I
little nervous.
didn't say all. I said they overwhelmingly, and I can document that.
Well, so the financial reality though is that the revenue that the Grand Prix brings in is a huge percentage of the Belle Isle Conservancy budget.
Yeah, but it's not a huge
but it doesn't.
The Belle Isle Conservancy is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It is not Belle Isle Park that is owned by the residents of the city of Detroit. So we're talking about some different things here, you know.
But I also look at the fact that there is a huge gap between the maintenance level of where Belle Isle should be and what needs to be paid for. Like story after story shows how water mains don't get fixed and all these things. It's because there's not enough money to do these things, even with the Grand Prix dollars.
You're not talking about all the money that the state has invested in Belle Isle in the last 5 years,
A lot of money
which
from
is
the state.
$40 million.
And they get
There's
very
all
little
kinds
credit.
of infrastructure projects taking place on Belle Isle now. Yes, the need is very great, but the money is there now that's been transferred to the state. The state taps into a lot of money. And, you know, the foundation money is there, too. The Ralph Wilson Foundation just gave, $2 million for this new trail that they're putting there with no strings attached.
Right.
They did say we got to take over the island for
we have
2
to have
months.
a car race.
Well, you've also seen the success of the Udolph Garden. That's
wonderful.
It's still
We
to come.
haven't seen it yet.
That's in keeping with the mission, though.
Yes.
It's something, you know, tranquil and natural, and it enhances the beauty of the island.
Right.
It doesn't put 10 acres of concrete
And it
there
will be a
that
tourist
affects
attraction.
the drainage of the, you know, the island.
Yeah.
The Udolph Garden is in the middle of the Grand Prix racetrack.
Right now.
So how in the hell are people going to be able to visit the garden? The Udolph Garden is actually a worldwide tourist attraction,
Absolutely.
or will be.
Yeah.
But nobody told Pete Udolph, and I talked to him directly. I interviewed him last week. Nobody told him about the Grand Prix. They just said, oh, yeah, you can have the garden over there. They didn't say that your garden's in the middle of a racetrack and there's fences around it for 2 months of the spring. Nobody told them that. They're trying to do everything at once just because we need handouts, they say.
Yeah.
You know?
Michael, I saw an article you wrote, I think it was a couple of years ago now, and it was based from a meeting with the Belle Isle, the Grand Prix organizing team, that you basically heard them say, we're not looking to keep staging this on Belle Isle forever. I mean, what do you get out of them? Because that seems to be like unclear. Because I've also seen stuff where you know they seem to want to stay there, and that seems to be
no plan B is what
Yeah.
we're
Right.
told.
Well, no plan B.
I mean, help us dig through that. What do you hear from them? Am I right that they seem to be sending mixed signals about that?
Well, I have not heard anything from them lately. But what Bud Denker stated is that we have other stuff we want to do on the rest of the island. We're not done here. We want to, you know...
The Grand Prix, that is.
Yeah, we want to contribute to the rest of the island. Well, they haven't done that so far. They've only contributed to their racetrack area. And so I don't know what he's talking about. And they've got a 3-year contract with a 2-year extension possible. And we are adamant that the state DNR should not be approving any 2-year extension for this race. The time for this race on Belle Isle is over.
Yes.
And it should
take
not
it back
continue.
to what it should be.
Well, so what do you? I mean, do you have an alternate suggestion for the for the Grand Prix where it should go? I mean, or
If
is
they
that
pay
sort of-
me, maybe. No.
No.
No, I always laugh because that question comes to us
Yes.
all of the time,
Exactly.
and I always say it is not
not
our
our
responsibility
responsibility.
for us to find you all a new place.
Yeah.
That's how I leave it because it's not. All we want is our park back.
Yeah. We have suggested places, but if you read newspaper articles and quotations from the Grand Prix organization, they say, Bud Denker said, there is no plan B. It is Belle Isle or nothing.
Yes.
That sounds pretty bullyish to me.
The fact is, everybody wants a part of Belle Isle because Belle Isle is a wonderful place.
It always
But the
has
question
been.
is, who owns Belle Isle? The answer is the city of Detroit still owns it. And the question is, who should use Belle Isle? And the answer is that the citizens of Detroit and Michigan should use it just like they use other state parks.
Absolutely.
Nobody would consider putting a racetrack in Kensington Metro Park, for instance, somewhere out in the suburbs. and taking it over for the whole spring.
Yeah. And they're celebrating 30 years. They're saying there's a tradition. But, just because it's been there for 30 years doesn't mean that it was right for it to happen in the first place. And the other thing is that it does keep on getting larger and larger, more and more sponsors, more and more commercialization, a larger footprint. Still, 62 days just for setup and tear down.
Nobody's answered why it takes them so long to do that. Because no other comparable race in the world takes that long.
Right.
And I'll tell you, if you go there now, you could see that the race could be run tomorrow. It's all set up. If they had an overnight crew working tonight, they could start racing in the morning. So why do they need to do that 2 weeks in advance and set up all that stuff? 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks in advance.
Today marks day 31.
Okay. Yeah.
Since they've been setting up.
Yeah.
And we still have 10 days until race weekend.
And what's Penske's business? Logistics.
Yeah. So
I seriously don't get, and I've never gotten an answer to that question. Why do you need so long to do this?
Yeah. All right. So you've got a protest planned Saturday morning, is it?
It's Saturday, May 25th. We're going to meet.
Okay.
We're going to meet at 12 p.m. until 2 p.m. And it's along Jefferson Avenue at the bridge
at
of
the
Belle Isle.
entrance. Yeah. And we have a website, too, that you can go for information. It's www.belleisleconcern.com. We have a Facebook page that is Belle Isle Park, not Racetrack. So those are other places to go for information.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks so much for coming by. Angela Lugo-Thomas, Michael Betzold, Sandra Novacek of Belle Isle Concern. Thanks so much for stopping by and talking with us about this.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Elsewhere in the news, in a pair of interviews with the Detroit Free Press and Crains Detroit Business, the head of Olympia Development and Ilitch family scion Chris Ilitch defended the District Detroit development. It's been the focus of a lot of criticism for failing to deliver on the promise of developing a vibrant 50-block area, despite receiving nearly $400 million in tax incentives. In the interviews, Ilitch defended the construction of acres of surface parking lots, pointing to the region's lack of mass transit and the city's requirements for parking near the Little Caesars Arena. He also acknowledged that their timeline for the District Detroit project, quote, proved to be aggressive, unquote. We'll have links to both in the show notes.
The University of Michigan on Wednesday said it has hired former Wolverines star Juwan Howard to be the next coach of its men's basketball team. Howard was a member of the Fab Five teams of the 1990s, who also played 19 years in the NBA. He's been an assistant with the NBA's Miami Heat for 6 seasons, but he's never been a head coach. He replaces John Beilein, who left to coach the Cleveland Cavaliers. Howard will get a 5-year deal with a starting salary of $2 million.
Lastly, Detroit Tigers legend Willie Horton now has a street named after him. Officials yesterday gave West Canfield at the Lodge Freeway the secondary name Willie Horton Drive. It's near where Horton grew up as one of 21 children. Horton was a member of the 1968 World Series championship team. He spent 15 seasons with the Tigers and hit 325 home runs. All right, that'll do it for Your Daily Detroit. Tomorrow, we'll have our regular conversation with our man about town, Tiffin O'Reilly, on all the restaurant and bar happenings you need to know about.
With that, I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.